We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's special edition, we are talking politics and faux progressivism. It's going to be quite the show. Please remember, Liberty Nation Radio is sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. And you're on Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides, and we're very fortunate to have with us Liberty Nation's senior political analyst and longtime host of this here radio show, Mr. Tim Donner. Thanks for coming back in, Tim.
Hello, Mark. Good to be here, as always.
So I couldn't resist getting you in because you've highlighted something in a recent article on LibertyNation.com that is so encapsulating of the mood of the nation that you read it and it's almost... You have to, whether you approve of what Donald Trump is doing or not, you almost have to, you're forcibly admitted to, you're forced to admit that here's the point and here's the important point. And this piece, it was called Tracking 47. It's really about how approval polls don't really mean as much as right direction, wrong track polls, because that gives the mood of the nation. Would you like to sort of expand on what you found, what the theme was?
Well, I think the point of the article more than anything else was to say that, presidential popularity or presidential approval tends to be a combination of personal popularity and job performance. And it comes and goes as tariffs are added, subtracted, added back, as peace talks between Ukraine and Russia or between the U.S. and Gaza, the U.S. and Iran, they wax and they wane. And so the personal popularity polls even job performance polls have a very limited usage, especially since, we have a president who has so many, balls in the air, so to speak, very few of which have yet to land on solid ground. So there's so much up in the air. And you can talk about inflation, you can talk about foreign policy, you can talk about the economy, you can talk about the border. And generally his favorability is very high on these things, relatively speaking. But the way to really gauge how people feel about life under the 47th president, the best indicator of that is the right track, wrong track numbers, which get reported but are often understated in terms of their importance because it shows beyond just the popularity of a given politician. We have to remember that there are millions upon millions, untold millions of Americans who don't care about politics, who don't like politics, who don't follow politics, and are pretty much agnostic or think both parties are corrupt, or they just don't pay attention for any reason. But those people have an opinion about what life is like.
Yeah.
And now that we're 6 months past the election and more than 4 months past when Trump took the oath of office, seemed a good time to take stock. And what the right track, wrong track numbers show is that the right track right now is at its highest level since 2009. That's 16 years. And that one in 2009 was when Barack Obama had just taken office, and hope and change were the themes of the country. And so everybody sort of felt on an upward swing other than conservative.
I should point something out here. So it's beginning of 2009 when it was at the same point that it is now. But that was the last high point. So everybody had in their hearts hope and change, or many people had in their hearts hope and change. And then were clearly sorely disappointed. Otherwise, that number would have stayed the same or gone up, right?
Yes, no, that's true. And it only went down from there, especially during his second term. But an important caveat in the right track, wrong track numbers is to understand that the wrong track has always outweighed the right track for the entirety of the century. Because I think, for example, today, some Democratic voters who voted for Harris might still believe that their lives are better under Trump than they were before, or at least better than they expected it to be. But they're not going to tell. They're not going to tell a pollster, "Oh yeah, I think we're on the right track." So you're almost guaranteed to have 50% of people who say we're on the wrong track, for starters.
Yeah.
But all of that said, the difference between now and the election of 2024 and the day that Trump took office is stark. During the last 10 polls, right track, wrong track polls taken by various organizations of 2024, range from right track as low as 17% to a high of 34% to a 27% average. So you take that 27% when Biden was still in office and Kamala Harris was the candidate for president, and you compare it to now, Americans are on the whole 63% more believing we're on the right track than they were before the election. And the difference is almost as stark since January 20th. So on any given issue, let's say people are still very anxious about the tariffs because it's a high risk, high reward strategy that's far from having landed where it's going to eventually wind up. And whether Trump says he can end the Russia-Ukraine war and then he can't, or what you feel about the economy or the tax cut bills or the DOGE program, those are just components. But the composite of all of those things can be discovered most perfectly, not perfectly, but most perfectly with the right track, wrong track numbers. And those numbers reveal that Americans, maybe you might say they're relieved compared to where they were before the election in the last couple of years. But they're also more happy with the trajectory of their lives than any time since the early hope and change days of Barack Obama. And I think that speaks volumes about the fact that whether you agree with them on any individual decision or not, the highest number of people in 16 years believe we're on the right track in this country.
I wonder, once, as you mentioned, these juggling balls that have yet to hit the ground, I wonder if any of them land positively, then that there might be a near record, well, certainly beating 2009. Because if we're at 2009 numbers now, which was the previous high point for this century, I wonder if any of these land correctly or in the right spots, that we might see that increase. Now, we're going to be back with Tim Donner after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.